What's happening? Welcome to the Fabulous Big Bet. It is your host. It is Memphis. You can find me on Twitter at DWZ Memphis. And he's back at it again. He's here to help me break down week 8. You know him as the good doctor. He is Dr. Kyle. You can find him on Twitter at DWZ_Dr. PT. Dr. Kyle, man, what is going on in NYC this evening?
Memphis, would you please address me as what my current StreamYard name is? Just for tonight. Come on.
Fine. This is a loner nickname, and this is gimmick infringement, and it feels dirty, but he is the man of the hour and the loner man with the power. He is Dr. Kyle Bowser. Dr. Kyle, yeah. So a shout out to our boy Matty, who does all of our graphics. I'm sitting here looking through all the custom overlays he's built for us on our streaming service. I'm like, here's one for me and Matty, and here's another one for me and Matty, and a third one for me and Matty, and just one for me and Jerry, and here's one for Matty and Kyle, and another one for Matty and Kyle, and just one for Matty, and then one for Matty solo. There's none for me and you, bud. But hey, you're on a loner. You're borrowing Jerry's man of the hour, man with the power. But remember, as Spider-Man and his Uncle Ben taught us, with great power comes great responsibility. So, man, I'm fired up. We had a great week last week of bets and DFS. I learned a very valuable lesson about DFS that I'm looking forward to share. But how was your overall week last week, man? I felt pretty good.
Oh, it was great. It was dollar signs across the board. I'm sure we'll get into it at some point in depth, but last week, even just like looking at the numbers last week was, I think, the first week where I really felt dialed into what Vegas was throwing at us. The first few weeks, especially with this weird offseason, not getting to watch anybody until week 1, really felt like, okay, we've got something to navigate here. And I think the pieces started to fall into place last week. And, now we've got a number of repetitions on our belt. So, yeah, it paid dividends.
For sure. So one thing that I can share. So at my place of work, I'm a production manager for a large production facility. And one of our group leads, his name is Gary. He runs a pool the same way you would run a like an NCAA bracket pool. Every week he prints out a checklist. It's got little check boxes. It's got every game. Everybody ponies up $10. And this week I claimed the money. I only missed one game all week. And you're just picking it straight up against the spread. And then I'm doing this contest on DraftKings where every week you have to pick 5 games against the spread. This past week I went 5 for 5. Now I can't guarantee you that I'm going to pick, I think last week it was 13 out of 14 games straight up, and I can't guarantee I'm going to go 5 and 5 against the number. But I'm telling you, as I get more and more information about these, I feel more and more confident about what's going on. We're going to jump into some betting in just a quick minute, but I want to cover some things going forward. So I'm going to shorten the intro as it relates to promoting the show. And the reason why is the show, everything is going to podcast, and everything on the podcast is going to YouTube. So right now on our YouTube channel, you will get Mondays, you'll get Dynasty Table Talk with Matty. He's our graphics guy and one of our Dynasty content providers. On Tuesday, you get Dr. Kyle and Matty, and they're breaking it down. And man, you guys don't tell Jerry, because it's like you're already wearing his clothes. You've got his man of the hour, man with a power graphic up here. Don't tell him, but I really, really, really enjoy the Tuesday injury show with you and Matty. You guys do an absolutely great job. Your expertise as a doctor of physical therapy, it's awesome, man. So just kudos to you on that.
Appreciate that, Memphis. All I need is Jerry's sultry voice and maybe a microphone and a backwards hat, and he's replaced. Sorry, Jerry, but that's all it's going to take.
You're getting there. It's like the one spouse that can seize the other spouse making a move on them. And then Wednesday, we've been doing the Dynasty Warzone for. We've not missed a Wednesday. I think it's 116 Wednesdays in a row. You and I are doing the Fabulous Big Bet on Thursday. And then for like the redraft player, the players that are looking for that flex option going into the weekend, our boy Matty's going to drop a quick hitter on Fridays. I've dubbed it the Flexcast with Funkmaster Flex or something to that effect. And then on Saturday, this one will not be on YouTube. No, everything will be a podcast. Everything will be on YouTube except for two shows. On Tuesday, our Dynasty Master class will be Patreon only. I'm starting to incorporate more of the Patreons in that with me. And most of that is Dynasty fantasy football based, but a lot of times it's life based, and it's just a really great group of people. And this thing's growing out of control. So that's Tuesday nights. That's when that pod drops. It's for patrons only. And then on Saturday, the reason why Saturday is because I am going to be doing the People's Prop Show. So I love prop bets. We're going to talk about some prop bets here in a minute. Maddie and I kind of did an impromptu version of this last Saturday. We kind of mixed the flex show and the prop show together. He gave 3 possible flex options. I gave a couple of prop bets. Now, not all of these shows are going to be hour and 15 or super long podcast. You know, the injury report can range from hopefully 15 minutes, and I've seen it go as long as like 45. These are designed for, you know, easy consumption on Tuesday before you have to put in that waiver wire bid to make sure who you want to pick up, how long you think the injuries are going to be. Because what I've learned a very valuable lesson from our reviews on iTunes and on YouTube. Not everybody consumes all of our content via YouTube. Not all of our consumers consume our content via podcast. So why not put everything everywhere for every type of consumer? So with the exception of the patron show and the propcast, everything will be on YouTube, and then everything else will be on the podcast feed except for the patron. So no more of me telling you about the Devi show. I'm going to pin a tweet that's going to have a full menu of our shows, who's hosting, what days of the week, where you can find it. That's why they call it a menu. You go to a restaurant, they tell you what it is, how much it costs, what's on it. All of those fun things. And I won't have to bore you anymore because I take the 5-star reviews from the Apple, YouTube, wherever we get them, take them very seriously. And one of the criticisms has been, you guys spend an awful lot of time covering what's coming up. I'm just here for the Dynasty content, or I'm just here for the gambling content, or I'm just here for the injury content. Cool beans. No more of that going forward. You'll know the rotation. And I said this the other day, I subscribe to Colin Cowherd's podcast network. I have for years. I know he's a little bit silly. He's a little bit, out there sometimes. And he now has a lot of different shows on his podcast feed. One that I've turned everybody onto, and everybody who's ever listened to this show has absolutely sent me a DM and thanked me for this. It's the 3 and Out podcast with John Middlecoff. John Middlecoff was a West Coast scout for the Philadelphia Eagles. He has direct ties to Matt Nagy, Sean McDermott, Andy Reid. He's had all these guys on his podcast. He's got a very educated opinion, and it's a different opinion than our fellow Dynasty and fantasy analysts. So it's a great podcast. But back to the herd network of pods, he's got the basketball one with Doug Gottlieb. I don't like basketball, so I swipe left and delete it right out of my podcast player. He has the Dallas Cowboys podcast. I swipe left. I just blow it right out of my thing. But I subscribe because I don't want to miss the 3 and Out podcast. I subscribe because I want his daily podcast, because I can consume it in the way that I want to, and that's what we're going to do. So give all of the new shows a try. You'll like some more than others. That's just the way life works. And subscribe and enjoy some of the best fantasy, dynasty, and gambling DFS content in the space. So all that being said, Dr. Kyle, I am very, very happy to have you on board the team. This thing has been my baby for 2.5 years. I have, kept this close to the chest, but I am very excited to have you and Maddie join the team as content providers and allowing you guys to take more of the reins.
Honored, Memphis. I still remember the phone call that, hey, you want in? Let's do this. And here we are months later. Who knew this was going to go as quickly as it is? We're almost midway through the season, more than midway through the fantasy season, and we're just getting rolling.
And a lot of this, we could have waited until the off season, or we could have planned this out better. I think there's no better time to get started than to just get started. Let's get rolling. Why wait? So we're going to post the regular season content menu up today or tonight. as we were recording on Wednesday, man. But I'm here to gamble. I don't know about you. It says it right in the show open. I want to gamble. What about you, Doc? You want to gamble?
What do they say? Something about money won or something is like twice as good as money
That's
earned. Where have
that's
I
the
heard that
sign.
before?
That's the sign off. It's the classic from Fast Eddie Felson, played so well in both The Hustler and in The Color of Money. If you have Amazon Prime, The Color of Money is on Amazon Prime this month. I highly recommend it. Paul Newman won an Academy Award for his role in this movie. It is fantastic. Again, it is called The Color of Money. It has Paul Newman and Tom Cruise in it. It is fantastic. But one of the things that he says in that movie that has resonated with me for just about my entire life is that money won is twice as sweet as money earned. And when you win that money, what you can do is you can go directly over to Veridian Global. They are the official apparel provider of the Dynasty Warzone, as well as the Dynasty Happy Hour, the GOAT District, and so many more excellent podcasts. They also have player-specific t-shirts. It's a great one-stop shop for people who like unique and funky, fresh tees. And in the month of November, October's wrapping up, but in November, I can tell you that the Dynasty Happy Hour and the Dynasty Warzone have exclusive Salute to Service inspired t-shirts where all of our portion of the profits, and from what I understand, the gentlemen at Veridian Global are doing the same. So basically, if you buy a shirt, whatever the gross profit is for them and us, we're going to donate that to a veterans charity. But we're only making limited batches of the Dynasty Warzone. I believe that's the same for the Veridian Global shirt as well as the Dynasty Happy Hour shirt. Get over there and check them out. It was a Dynasty Warzone original idea that we stole from the NFL. And we will have those shirts up for the month of November or until they're gone. So head over to Veridian Global. That's VERIDIAN, VeridianGlobal.com, and check them out. I'm going to be honest. I think the Dynasty Happy Hour one's my favorite. I'm not sure, but I think Maddie, who did the graphics on just about all of these, knocked it out of the park. But Dr. Kyle, let's talk gambling. Let's talk wagering. Man, tell me about your big bet and how your overall week of wagers went.
So actually, my big bet was probably my biggest disappointment. Again, to reiterate, I had Saints Panthers over 51. Do you remember the score of that game?
I believe it was 27-24 in favor of the Saints.
Yes, and 27 plus 24, as we know, is exactly 51. So it was a push. The storyline that I had, the narrative that I came up with was great. The Panthers came roaring back in the second half, and they were even marching down the field for a tying field goal, and Teddy Bridgewater took a sack on third down in field goal range, and then I believe Joey Sly put it off the crossbar or very close to it from 65 yards. And a push doesn't hurt. Like nobody likes to tie, but it's money's on the line, so it's better than losing money. But as far as the process goes, it felt right. It felt like it, Vegas is on this. Like they know what they're doing. So that was my big bet. It's not a loss. But outside of that, I felt pretty good. I was on, I talked about liking the Steelers getting points at Tennessee. So I was on that. And then I dabbled in teasers this week, Memphis. So I also teased, I liked the over in that game. So I teased the Steelers to 7 and maybe even 7.5 because they got to 1.5 at one point. And I teased the over down 6 points. So that hit. I was on the Chargers Jags over 49. I tweeted at you at that one. I think we were in either the late second quarter or early third quarter when we were feeling pretty good about that. And then I texted you a picture. So folks, if you're getting on my bookie, keep an eye on my bookie's odds about 10 to 15 minutes before kickoff, at least. So it happened at the 1 o'clock slate on Sunday. I saw an offer you could get the Jets plus 20, I believe. And that was still like minus 110. So you were getting a typical payout to cover, but you were getting double the odds. And something similar happened with the Rams Bears on Monday night. I didn't want to touch that. But I took the Jets plus 20 and, the Bills were coming off of consecutive weeks, only on 6 days rest. And on top of that, let's see, I had Arizona getting 3.5. I'll get to my what I learned this week at some point in that game, because I also tried to get too sneaky with that, or too cute with that. And then I think you were talking about, or it might have been your big bet, Panthers getting 7.5 against the Saints. So that was also one of my teasers where I took the Panthers at getting 13.5, and then I teased the over down to 45. So that's a quick summary of my week last week, but it was my best week by far so far. How was yours?
Mine wasn't too bad. So yeah, you liked my big bet. I let you go first. That was my downfall last week. That was my big bet, was Jacksonville at the Chargers over. I think it was 49 or 49 and a half, if I do recall. And yeah, you're right. I think they had like 30, it was like 32 or 36 points at halftime, and they came right out to like an immediate score. And I think we got there before the fourth quarter even started, thanks in part to my main man from a dynasty and fantasy standpoint, Justin Herbert, and his sidekick, James Robinson. I love those young men. They're like family at this point. But no, I hit that one. That was my big bet. That puts my big bets on the season at 5-2. And if it wasn't for the damn Jets, it should be 6-1. The one that I took, the loss of the under in the Atlanta-Minnesota game, it still stings a little bit, but that's my own fault. That was a lesson I learned last week. But yeah, that was my big bet. I had Jacksonville and the Chargers over 49.5. Yeah, I got on that Carolina New Orleans one early. That was one where I went back and did some research, and outside of the bogus late touchdown run by Leonard Fournette, Carolina really hasn't lost a game by more than 7 points all year. I got that number early. I got it at 7.5. That was an easy cash. I took Detroit and Atlanta. I didn't learn my lesson. I'm the little kid who puts his hand on a burning hot stove. And so what I do, I burnt my right hand 2 weeks ago. So last week I put my left hand on it, because I'm not smart enough to have learned a lesson. The Lions and Falcons came nowhere near to covering 55.5. I got hit with that push juice as well. I took Pittsburgh and Tennessee. I got it late. I took the over 51. Tennessee has been hemorrhaging points. I think they've given up 30 points in just about every game or close to it this year. And I thought, man, I just saw a ragtag bunch of scrubs in the Philadelphia Eagles put up 31 points on this Pittsburgh defense. And I thought, man, Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill's been hot. You got Derrick Henry. Surely to God, if Pittsburgh can put up 30, then Tennessee can put up, 21, even against that great Pittsburgh defense. So, okay. I'm like, okay. It's like at the halftime, I think it was like 30 or 32 points, and Pittsburgh's in field goal range. And Big Ben makes a stupid pass and chucks it in the end zone, and it gets intercepted. And that cost me 3 points. But then we get down to the end of the game. Pittsburgh's up 3. It's 27-24. I'm like, this is perfect. Let's get that field goal in there. Nope. Old Goskowski went stoink, pulled it, and that game finished as a push for me at 51 points. Then my player props, the ones I covered with Matty Big Chest. The first one, Jared Goff, under 250.5 passing yards. That was a win. Now, that was a sweat because he came out hot. And I was nervous because Jared Goff had not even passed for over 200 yards against this Bears defense the last 2 years. And thank God Sean McVay packed it away and ran the ball with the big lead late. And he finished with around 230. The one that I was very perplexed about, but it was an odd game. It was the snow game in Denver. Patrick Mahomes, his player prop was 22.5 rushing yards. And I did my research. I didn't throw this out there willy-nilly. I did my research, and I had noticed that over his last 9 games, including the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes has averaged 33.5 rushing yards a game. Okay, there's a pro in his box. Check. So then I looked over, and then Denver, in their 2 games before the Chiefs game, had given up 86 yards rushing to Sam Darnold and 76 yards rushing to Cam Newton. I'm thinking, well, man, Patrick Mahomes isn't as mobile as Cam Newton, but he's got to be more mobile than Sam Darnold. So, hey, what the hell? I put some money on that. So my player props were a push. All in all, I was 4-2-1 on the season. That pushes my overall record to. I take that back. Excuse me. It was 3-2-1. It pushes my overall record to 25-18-2. So that's about 58%. And as some of our favorite pro bettors like to say, that will get you both a mansion and a yacht. So I'm feeling pretty good long term. I just want to keep it up, man. I've been hot. I want to stay hot. And I think I'm ready to put this behind us. Week 7's in the books. I'm ready to move on to week 8. How about you?
I just want to touch on my player
Sure.
props. So I dabbled in 2 props. They both were in the Dallas Washington football team game. I went defensive touchdown from either or defense or special teams touchdown at any point, which I felt like the process was right because there was even a safety, not a touchdown. So I ultimately didn't win, but it was like plus 300, I think. So I threw a few bucks on it. And then my other was CD Lamb's receptions over under was 5.5. And that guy has been peppered with targets over and over and over. And I think he finished with 7 or 8 receptions. So I won there. And, I'll get to my bookie doesn't have their player props out until the day of the game, but I'll talk about what I'll be looking for at some point later in today's show. Otherwise, week 8, let's rip.
Week 8. It's my favorite week because it's the week that we're on. We're going to jump into our live bets. Let me give you just 1 minute to talk about MyBookie. You've referenced them a couple of times. That's the spot where Dr. Kyle and I get down. MyBookie.ag. This is the odds provider of the Fabulous Big Bet and the sports betting site that we love the most, where they're offering a 100% sign-up bonus up to $1,000 if you use the promo code DWZ Memphis at sign up. There's a minimum $45 deposit, but I mean, if they're willing to match you up to $1,000, asking you to hit a minimum of 45 is not a big deal. And we're going to help you. We're going to help you do big things over there. So there's a link in the show description. If you're listening to this on the podcast, I've got to work with Maddie, our YouTube guru, to get the show links and all the sponsor links in the YouTube as well. But for now, if you're listening in audio form, you can pause the podcast, go to the show description, and there's a hyperlink. You push the hyperlink, it takes you right to sign up on MyBookie. Promo code DWZ Memphis is pre-populated. You get going. If you have any questions, because we've had a couple of very intelligent, smart people have a couple of issues. Dr. Kyle at DWZ _ Dr. PT, he can help you answer them. If it feels like there's a hoop, if there's something to jump through, Dr. Kyle can help you out with that. Dr. Kyle, you figured all of it out pretty easy. And even though you're a doctor, you're not the smartest cat around.
No, I'm definitely not the smartest doctor ever. But you just have to pass to become a doctor. So here I am with my degree, not in the kitchen, but somewhere else, probably under a bed or in a closet, because I live in New York City and there's only so much space for shit on the walls.
Yeah, no kidding. And all you got to do is get past the initial sign up at mybookie.ag, and that's where Dr. Kyle, you did hear him reference he was a citizen of the great state of New York and in New York City. Maybe he can help you if you live in an area like New York or New York City. Reach out to him. We can help you out. There's the hyperlink in the show sheet. Dr. Kyle, I'm going to give you the honors. It's kind of like a golf game. I'm going to give you the honors, sir. Give us a game that you like. Maybe that you're not betting yet or something you've got your eyeball on.
All right. So I wasn't necessarily going to talk about this one until it became a thing in a group chat with a few buddies. We're always talking fantasy football, gambling, even stocks, news, and then shenanigans. But right now, San Francisco is at Seattle, and Seattle is only giving 2.5. I know Seattle hasn't been the best team to cover spreads to this point in the season, but thinking about game script and narratives and motivation at this point. So Seattle came off of a bit of a bad beat heartbreaker Sunday night in Arizona. And I feel like they felt like they had that one. And Russ Wilson is still having an MVP type season. Pete Carroll is still a legend of a coach in Seattle. And San Francisco is coming off of a massive victory over New England. and Bill Belichick. And so I feel like there's this overcorrection in the market that's happened this week. Obviously Vegas, they know what they're doing. I'll reiterate that over and over. I guess that would be a reiterate. And I think about where San Francisco is as a team right now, and Jimmy G, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, he threw for something like 275 passing yards. And I think his average depth of target was under 2 yards. And I think over 230 yards came after the catch. So this San Francisco offense, yes, Kyle Shanahan is a scheme master. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to move the ball on the ground. He knows how to scheme, his Brandon Ayuks and Debo Samuels and George Kittles into open space. But, I think about how this game could go. I feel like if San Francisco gets up, Seattle can come roaring back. But I feel like if Seattle gets up, San Francisco, I don't see San Francisco as a shootout team. The best I think they can do is slow a game down with their running game, but their defense is not what it's been in the past. They've given up points to I don't have it up right now, but they haven't been as staunch on their defensive line as they have in the past. And for that reason, I've already put money on it, because when it comes to discussing things with your friends, I will put my money where my mouth is. And for that reason, I like Seattle laying 2.5 to San Francisco in Seattle. Yeah, also, it's in Seattle, 2.5 points in Seattle. Vegas is more or less saying that San Francisco and Seattle are equal teams, and I feel like that's far from the case. So yeah, that's my first like. How do you feel about that?
So you're make sure I got you correctly that you are laying the points with the Seahawks.
Yes.
I see. I'm in a disagreement. Seattle. First of all, one of the number one things I hate betting on is a team that just played a full overtime, and that game came all the way down to the wire. It was a division game, tough game. Seattle traveled, and I know that the Niners traveled all the way to New England and back, so the travel thing could be a bit of a wash. But if you go back and historically look at teams that play a full overtime, man, it's taxing. And I do agree that Seattle can come back, but this San Francisco defense has looked really, really good the last couple of weeks. Now, there was the misstep against the Dolphins, but they held the Rams in check. They held the Patriots in check. So I don't know that I love it. I would look to kind of avoid this game anyway. I think that I get the better coach in Shanahan. You get the better you get the better quarterback with the Seattle Seahawks, and this game in the line's pretty close to me. So I'm not going to touch it personally, but I can understand. I just fear that the research has been done by the pregame team, but Seattle has had something like 30 touchdowns and only 3 field goals. That's like a 90% touchdown rate when the NFL average is around 60 or 65. At some point, there's going to be some regression there to the mean, and all those touchdowns that they're scoring in Seattle are going to turn to field goals. And a lot of these covers that they've been able to pull off, I don't know. So if this game was in San Francisco, I would be all over San Francisco. I don't like betting against Russell Wilson at home, so I'm just going to fade the game entirely. For me, my first like of the week, and I've actually already bet this one too, the New England Patriots at Buffalo Bills. I know that we're not supposed to bet against the hoodie. I'm actually wearing a very Bill Belichick-esque hoodie. It's got a little rip here in the neck. I don't look quite as disheveled as Uncle Bill, but I think this is a motivation spot. And the one thing that I didn't like out of New England is if you just watch the game, and I'm not watching the all 22 and, breaking down plays and there was a zone and this is no. I'm just looking at effort. When a Bill Belichick team does not bring effort on defense, I understand the offense is struggling. People want to give Cam the pass of like my co-host here. Well, Cam had COVID. Well, he was asymptomatic. If he's asymptomatic, he shouldn't have any lingering effects of COVID. So, but I'm not the doctor. He's the doctor. He can refute that here in just a second. But I just don't think Cam's very good at football, at least not anymore. Tim Tebow was really good in that Josh McDaniels offense for a short sample size as well. And then the more tape defensive coordinators got on them, the less effective it was. And if there's a worse set of skill weapons in the NFL than New England, I would sure love you to try to, point them out to me, because N'Keal Harry's a bust. Julian Edelman has either quit or is just, riding out the string. And then there are no other weapons. So I know that the Buffalo Bills just put up 6 field goals on the Jets, but I feel like that was a look ahead spot. I feel like the Buffalo Bills were just trying to get the W against the Patriots, and that they were looking ahead. Excuse me, that they're just trying to get the W against the Jets, looking ahead to this game, because the Patriots are 2-4. This puts them at 2-5, and it puts the Bills at, I believe, 6-2. They don't have their bye. So they would be a full 4 games in the win column plus the tiebreaker over the Patriots. I'm not going to go as far as to say that gives them the division, but it certainly gives them a hell of a leg up. And I don't think Miami's a real threat currently at 3-3. So I add all that up. I look at the motivation. I look at what seems to be a lack of motivation on the other side. And I would much rather get this. I will continue to shop it, and I will cash out my 3.5 point bet, maybe give up a couple of cents to get down on this at 3 even. But I like Buffalo at home. I'm giving up the points against the Patriots. Am I nuts?
Not nuts, Memphis. This is one where I looked at it and I was like, ooh, 3.5 feels like robbery, thievery.
I mean, I know Ric Flair said to be the man, you got to beat the man, and that's exactly the spot Buffalo's in. New England's been the man in that division for 2 decades, and if Buffalo wants to be the man, I understand they have to beat the man, but that was I get that point as well.
Yeah, no, and again, like the Buffalo Bills organization has flipped this team beautifully in what feels like a very short period of time. They were being steamrolled, I think, Josh Allen's rookie year or the year before, and we're only in his 3rd year, correct? And like you said, like the Bills were just trying to get through that Jets game. They knew they just needed to win. Again, unprecedented back-to-back weeks of only 6 days in between games. They played on a Tuesday, a Monday, and a Sunday, and now here they are. They get their full week before they play New England at home. I just, in my head, my thought process was Bill Belichick losing 4 games in a row. I don't know if I have the cojones to bet that right now, but everything else says bet it. Like you said, the weapons, they have nothing on defense. Again, like there was this narrative last year with them that their defense was amazing. If you look at their first 7 or 8 games last year, it was Dolphins twice, Redskins, Giants, Jets twice. It was this, and then they were not exactly as effective the second half of the year. They didn't go 16-0, and they started off so hot, especially their fantasy defense. We're not here to talk that, but they are a ghost on both sides of the ball of what they were a year ago, just a completely different identity. Yeah, that might be a game I get in on this week.
All right. What's your second lean?
All right. So I'm going to talk 2 here because one has a bit of a contingency plan. And the San Francisco, Seattle, I just had to bring it up because it was a friendly discussion earlier. My first one is the Los Angeles Chargers at Denver, and the Chargers are giving up 3. Justin Herbert looks like the real deal, and Drew Lock looks like nothing at this point. I don't know if he's got lingering effects from his rotator cuff strain injury from a few weeks ago, but Denver is not scoring points. If this Chargers team continues to roll with the weapons they have, it doesn't even matter. They have a very next man up mentality on their offense. It's Keenan Allen one week, it's Mike Williams another week, it's Jalen Guyton another week, Herbert slinging the ball downfield, it's Justin Jackson, it's Josh Kelly. And Denver, if we look at Denver's points scored in each game, aside from putting up 37 against the Jets, surprise, they put up 21 against the Steelers, 14 against the Titans. Those are pre-lock injury. 10 against the Bucks, 16 against the Chiefs, 18 against the Patriots. You're telling me that the Chargers aren't going to score, 21, 24, 27 points to cover three? I think I really like this Chargers team in Denver this week, giving up three. And then the other one, this might ruffle Jerry and Maddie Big Chest's feathers a little bit. And again, this is there's a contingency this game. Indianapolis is giving up 2.5 in Detroit. They're coming off a bye, and Darius Leonard is potentially going to play this week. If Darius Leonard plays this week and the line stays at 2.5, I'm going to take Indianapolis. If Darius Leonard doesn't play and it stays at 2.5, I think I'm going to take Detroit at home. I think he's such an important cog in the wheel of that Indianapolis defense. It looked so strong for the first few weeks, and it's looked very pedestrian since. I think that's been a big part of it. So yeah, those are my two, like the Chargers giving 3 to Denver in Denver, and the Colts giving 2.5 to Detroit, pending Darius Leonard playing this week.
All right. Well, I'm going to roll this into the portion of the program that we forgot about what we learned from last week. The one thing that I learned from last week was the weather. Watch the weather. So one thing I really like about that Denver, now this is a bonus one for me as well, that I really like is the over in that game. The over in that game, I believe, is 49. I am pulling that up right now as we speak. It's actually 44.5. I apologize. I misspoke. Let me read you what the Chargers defense has given up the last 3 weeks. They gave up 29 to the Jags, 30 to the Saints, and 38 to the Buccaneers. If that just holds true, and I get that the Jags, I get that the Broncos offense is not going to be confused with the Saints or the Buccaneers, but it could be confused with the Jags. And we know that the way this offense is playing, and I've already checked the weather in Denver, and it's going to be 65 and sunny. Now, the only thing and the only person or persons less accurate than a weatherman are Twitter fantasy analysts. Only person less accurate than the weatherman. So this is one of those games where I will watch the weather, I'll watch the line, and I'm going to bet the over. I think Denver can easily score 21 points, and I think that the Chargers can easily score 28. That it feels very likely. So I like the over in this game. I also have Pittsburgh +4 at Baltimore. And the reason why, I don't normally like getting involved in these games, but I went back and looked last year. The Ravens blew the Steelers out in the week after Christmas, the 29th of December, beat them 28-10. But if you go back to it was in the middle of October, it was around this time, the Ravens beat them by 3, and that was without Big Ben. That was with something called Duck Hodges and Devlin Hodges, and there might have been a Mason Rudolph in there. And I know that I'm getting Big Ben. I know these games are traditionally slugfests. They're street fights between the Steelers and the Ravens. And I ask myself this question. If I've got Big Ben, can Big Ben score points against this Ravens defense and get me back in the game? Sure he can. Do I see this game coming down to a field goal? Sure I do. Can I see Pittsburgh winning this game outright? Absolutely. But then I put the shoe on the other foot and I ask myself, what happens if the Ravens get down 10 or the Ravens gets down 14? When the Ravens get down and Lamar's, so far this year, the inability, going back to the playoffs last year even, Lamar's inability to lead these teams back from, double-digit deficits, he's kind of like a turtle on his back, and that offense is in bad shape. So I see a lot more ways where this could go in favor of the Steelers than the Ravens. So I'm getting over a field goal. Even if the Ravens win, I don't see them blowing the Steelers team out. So for that reason, I like, and I will probably bet that game. But my big bet, I'm ready to roll. So Dr. Kyle, you look like the kind of young man that is a youth growing up. You had the Scholastic Book Fair. You maybe had a 10 spot in your pocket. Did you ever make your way over to the Choose Your Own Adventure books and make those kind of books a read for you?
Memphis, I have goosebumps right now, giving me all the feels. Choose Your Own Adventure. And I'm guilty. I always would
I'm sure
like
you would.
peek ahead. I don't know if I like this one.
You're a
Let's go back to
shyster.
this one.
You're a
But
shyster.
always, I would go the Nassau Public Library, not Nassau Long Island, Nassau Upstate, Nassau Public Library. Give me the choose your own adventures every day. Scholastic, they came to the library at Green Meadow Elementary School. Oh, let's hear it. Come on, you got my attention right
All
now.
right. So the over under in the Las Vegas Raiders at the Cleveland Browns is 52.5 per mybookie.ag. Now let me give you some stats, and then I'm gonna blow your mind. Cleveland averages on offense 28.6 points a game. The Raiders average 28.5 points a game. That's 57.1 points per game combined on offense between these two teams. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's 4.5 points more than this over under already. Cleveland on defense gives up 31.6 points per game on defense. The Raiders give up 32.8. That's 64.4 points per game these two teams give up on defense. It feels like it would be a slam dunk over the 52.5. Two capable offenses, two shitty defenses. What could be an easier slam dunk than this game over 52.5? The weather in Cleveland. It's supposed to be really cold. It's supposed to be really windy. And there's a 65% chance of rain. Now, rain in and of itself is not a huge detriment to scoring in most cases. But if you ask any pro gambler, you do any research on gambling over-unders and wind, it already pushes them. It already pushes them toward the under. I can tell you that I got this on mybookie.ag. I got it under 52.5, and I laid 110. They had this exact same wager at the exact same time on DraftKings. You could get it under 52.5. You had to lay $1.40. So there was heavy juice to the under because the story of the wind is getting out. If you're hearing this and you like this, get on this. There's a similar situation in Green Bay, by the way, and they have a similar over-under total. So for me, I'm going to watch this. I've already bet it under, but if for some reason the weatherman's wrong, again, not always the most accurate cat around, but if the weatherman's wrong and there isn't huge wind gusts up to 30 miles an hour, then I will, cancel one bet and I'll move it to the over. As of right now, I wanted to get locked into this under because, the weather forecast being what it is. And because of that, as of now, I am going under 52.5 Raiders at Cleveland. What do you think, Dr. Kyle? It's a choose your own adventure. You have to wait to make a decision on this up until game time. I'm gonna give some credence to the weatherman, and I'm gonna go ahead and say under for now.
You did your research on that one. It's funny because as you did that, I had to do some research on my big bet, and I pulled some weather for my home team's game. But a quick aside as far as lessons learned. Oh my God, I completely lost my thought. I'm just gonna go to my big bet and maybe my. Oh yeah. So guys, here we are. We record this on Wednesday night. We're live on YouTube, and we are trying to do our best to predict, project, understand games that are going to be played a number of days from now, 3 or 4. I think 4, 3.5. That is not ideal. So you should listen to us Thursday morning and look at what the numbers are on the platform you like to gamble on, and then just monitor them because you don't always have to get in right away. They will move. Different platforms talk about how the line will move a lot from Saturday night into Sunday because that's when a lot of the public likes to place their bets. Think about what you like between now and Sunday, or love. It could be your big bet or best bet. But you don't have to tie yourself to it until you're comfortable Sunday. So that being said, my big bet, I'm sticking with the over-unders, and we have Tennessee at Cincinnati this week with an over-under of 53.5. And you talked about Cleveland, and in my head I was like, oh boy, how close are Cleveland and Cincinnati geographically? Because geography is not my thing. It does not look like it's going to be windy in Cincinnati. It looks like it's going to be Sunday. All balmy 50 degrees, but that's very playable football weather. Let's see. What have we seen from Tennessee so far this year? We've seen Tennessee put up 42, 24, 42, 31, 33, only 16. That there's a caveat for that one. That was in Denver. I remember going into week one, that was either a big bet or a bet we liked because we know that the Broncos do very well at home the first 2 weeks of the season. So the Titans are scoring many points. They are also giving up many points. They've given up 27 to the Steelers, 36 to the Texans, only 16 to the Bills. But if you remember, that was a COVID adjusted schedule. So the Bills not necessarily prepared for that one. Also, Josh Allen, I believe, was injured and non-throwing shoulder the week before. Gave up 30 to the Vikings, 30 to the Jaguars, and then again 14 to the Broncos in the first week. Now let's scroll over to Cincinnati. Cincinnati just put up 34 against the Browns, 27 against the Colts, a dud against the Ravens, only 3, 33 against the Jaguars, tied the Eagles at 23, 30 against the Browns in the first week or the second week, and then only 13 rookie quarterback in the first week. But again, have given up points: 31 to the Colts, 37 to the Browns, 27 to the Ravens. You see the trend here. I very much feel like this. I feel like this game could touch high 50s, 60 points. I'm gonna give a shout out to my boy Seabat. We were talking about this earlier. He threw a random stat out there. Joe Burrow is only 5 for 27 or 5 for 28 on passing attempts into the end zone. That sounds like a stat that is due for regression. This Cincinnati offense, I believe, even sans Joe Mixon, sans, that's French for without, sans Joe Mixon is buzzing enough where AJ Green's getting fed, Tyler Boyd's getting fed, T. Higgins getting fed. Drew Sample is relevant. I don't think he's had a big week since the week Uzoma went out. But Joe Burrow looks like he's able to navigate this offense. I think you talked about some Joe Burrow stats. I'm not going to give out real information. There will be no I'm not going to give away what you guys talked about last night with Jerry. But I think this game has all the makings of we're putting a good offense against a good offense with a shitty defense against a shitty defense, though it's really a good offense against a shitty defense and a good offense against a shitty defense. And for all of those reasons, my fabulous big bet of the week is Tennessee and Cincinnati over 53.5.
You make a very compelling case there, my friend. That was actually one that I looked at. I could wind up in action on that game as well. The only thing that makes me nervous, one thing, I'll give you a pro and a con that I saw in this game. The pro is that Cincinnati is not going to quit trying to score no matter how far they're down. They got me a nice backdoor cover in the first game against Cleveland on that Thursday night football, and they just don't quit. I'll give you another mini pro that Tennessee allowed Jacksonville to score 30 points on them. So it's more than possible that Tennessee is going to do their part. Tennessee went to Indianapolis against what is now ranked the third-ranked defense in the league and put up, well into the 20s. It may have even touched 30 in that game. My only concern is that as the season gets later, I could see Mike Vrabel really wanting to ride the back of Derrick Henry, slow things down, and not continue to expose players. I just don't, it's not college. They're not going to run the score up. But with the fact that they're playing Tennessee, who is a craptastic offense, I could see some quick scores. I could also see with with Cincinnati's offensive line being in such a wreck, I could see Burrow making an errant throw or a strip sack for a fumble that could either lead to a short field or some quick scores. So I don't hate that. That is all of our betting action. We're going to jump into some quick DFS as we bring this one in for a landing. But before we do that, I want to make sure I give a shout out to our friends over at Hate Brand Goods. This is my favorite athletic apparel company. Obviously, I wear other brands too, but this is my t-shirt and short brand. I'm actually wearing the joggers right now. I'm not going to embarrass myself and do like the twerk dance video that Dr. Kyle did last week in his goat shorts. But they have a new collection. It says inspiration is for amateurs, meaning you should already be inspired. You should be inspired to do great things. shouldn't be a prerequisite. If you're curious about the Hate Brand Goods, I'm working real hard to get Matt, the owner and founder of the brand, on the show as a guest spot, just to kind of go over his career as a Highland Games athlete. He was a 2 times world champion in the Highland Games. His brother actually played in the NFL, did a stint with the Lions and the Finns. Just an all-around interesting guy, and I'm really proud to support the brand. So you can head over to The Hate, that's the HVIII.com. That's the H and Roman numeral for 8, HVIII, thehate.com. Check it out. If you see something you like the world famous Kick Today in the Dick coffee mug, use promo code Memphis at checkout. It'll save you some. Oh, look at this guy. He's got his Hate Brands water. It's probably better you're drinking water this late at night as opposed to coffee, Dr. Kyle. That's rad. I'm glad that you've got hooked up. Man, let's talk some DFS. I'm just going to roll because I'm rolling. And I want to share another lesson learned. The difference in DFS between hero and zero is very, very finite. I'll give you the lineup that I played. I play one Millie Maker lineup a week. I play on FanDuel because if I win their $1 million, it's not going to make me feel any better or worse than if I win the $1 million on DraftKings. I like FanDuel everything sportsbook DFS better than I like DraftKings. Neither support the show. The show is supported by mybookie.ag. They don't have a DFS option, at least not yet. Hello, my friends at mybookie.ag. But man, last week I hit well. I had Antonio Gibson. I had Alvin Kamara. I had Calvin Ridley. I had Terry McLaurin. I had TJ Hawkinson. I had the Washington defense. Those were all ones that I hit on. And even though I was kind of meh on Matt Stafford and Kareem Hunt, I mean, that's literally 8 of the 9 plays that I had in my roster. And my one miss was Traquan Smith. I knew Mike Thomas was out with a hamstring. I knew that Emmanuel Sanders was out with the COVID. And that didn't leave a lot of options beyond Alvin Kamara and Jared Cook. So, I'd always been led to believe that it was Traquan Smith. It was actually Marquez Callaway. It would have been as simple as flipping them, and I could have turned my Mr. Min cash into some serious cash. But that is the difference between being a hero and being a zero. I actually double min cashed late on Saturday. The fine folks at FanDuel sent me a free voucher for another Millie Maker. And I was like, what the hell? I entered a very similar lineup, and I got $7 out of both of them. I guess that's a min cash, but I had very little invested, and I put some bucks in my pocket. So it wasn't what I wanted. But man, you can't be meh on anything. You've got to hit. And often, there was the stat correction story that came out today that a guy lost $1 million on Monday night over a stat correction. And you think you've got bad beats, Mr. or lady out there. You don't have a story. So Dr. Kyle, did you get in any DFS last week? Any trials and tribulations?
So I didn't win any money, but if we're so my misses, Travis Kelce was my chalk tight end. That was not so chalk. That Chiefs offense got up so quick that he didn't have to do anything. And then Mike Williams was one of my plays in for the Chargers, and he wasn't even meh Williams. He was trash Williams. But if we're talking, so here's I guess a little bit more of a lesson. Trust your process, because my process last week was I put Jalen Guyton into a lineup. I talked about my lineup on FanDuel last week. That lineup also involved an Aaron Jones that hadn't been ruled out of practice with a strained calf yet. So then come the reports that he wasn't going to be playing, I then moved him out of my lineup, and of course didn't put Jamal Williams in, which also I think I overthought. I think a lot of people moved to Jamal Williams and Giovanni Bernard, and I thought back to the first week where Alexander Madison was playing for Dalvin Cook and he busted, and I just thought it was like, here's what everybody's going to be doing. I got to go against the grain. But in the process, it allowed more money in my flex, and I took Jalen Guyton out. So guys, like, it was Chase Claypool at one point. I forget who it was the past week or two. or 2 weeks ago, and it was Jalen Guyton this week. Like, you gotta scrape the bottom of the barrel. Find your find your guy that is going to potentially be a low percentage owned, but just like big bang for your buck. And then on top of that, like, I had Herbert in the league look good. I stacked him with Williams. Unfortunately, Latavius Murray, I thought he was going to be something. Stafford was meh. I did have the Washington football team. They were my defense to own as a Cowboys fan. So hoping to, turn it around in the DFS game this week now that I feel like I got a little bit of a wrangle on the Vegas game. Had Ridley at least. Who you got this week, Memphis?
Well, I just realized as I was preparing to cover what I have going on in DFS this week, I'm probably going to have to make some alterations. I wanted to get in on a high scoring projected over under game and I had already done my research on the Cleveland and Raiders game. I was like, okay, I'm feeling this. Two crappy defenses, two teams that have scored. Is like, this feels like a good one. I didn't want to go a Baker and a pass catcher stack. So I went with a cheap Derek Carr and Darren Waller stack. I may or may not move that. The Browns are 25th against the tight end, and tight end passes tend to be shorter, closer to the line of scrimmage, will be less impacted by wind and rain and what have you. So I may end up continuing to roll with that stack. I don't know, but I got Jonathan Taylor in there. I like the FanDuel half-point PPR format. Kareem Hunt in that same game. Again, if I see high scoring over unders, I want in. I absolutely want in. I saw what Leonard Fournette did in the passing game against this Oakland defense, the Las Vegas Raiders defense. I saw what his teammate Ronald Jones did, and if one guy is going to get most of that love, it could be a really, really good week for Kareem Hunt. Jonathan Taylor against those Lions indoors up there in Detroit. No worry about that. And Detroit's 31st against the rush. This kid's had a full week off. Hopefully they have him more involved in the passing game. The one that's going to surprise you is I took DK Metcalf in that Seattle game. For whatever reason, it says that Seattle's 5th against the fantasy wide receiver. I really don't care. I think that Vernette, I think that's his name, the cornerback with the long dread. San Francisco. I think he's a better matchup for Tyler Lockett. And I just see this being a Metcalf game. I don't think he's quite to the point yet to where he can talk about, hey, I want to get fed because Lockett got fed last week. I just think Lockett will be much more likely to be neutralized by a better corner than DK. So for those reasons, I'm going to go him. Justin Jefferson at Green Bay. I see their stud running back. Their stud cornerback. Jair Alexander. I see him being more on Adam Thielen. So he's been the hot hand, and this is another game with a 53.5 point over under. I may pivot from him if the wind is as bad as they say it's going to be in Green Bay. Again, this is not like an old school crock pot, guys. I don't set it and forget it. I don't set it and walk away from it. Be like, okay, I'm done. I monitor this up until the very end. I mentioned the fact that I think the Denver and KC game is going to be pretty decently scored. So I've got Keenan Allen in there with your man Justin Herbert. I may end up pivoting to him at quarterback, and then I had to get cheap, right? You're probably thinking, man, Memphis, how did you afford, JT and Hunt and Metcalf and Jefferson and Keenan Allen and Waller? What are you working with a special budget? Are you working with a LA Rams salary cap here? I'm actually not. I took Marquez Valdez-Scantling again. I set this before I looked at the weather. I feel like he's due, and in a high-scoring game, and all 4 of the Minnesota cornerbacks or the backfield, the secondary of the Vikings is banged up right now. So it feels like a couple of bombs to Scantling could be in order. Again, I'm going to have to adjust this entire thing based on weather. But I'm going to stick with my philosophy. I'm going to continue to find the games with the highest over-unders, and I'm going to continue to plug players in. I'm going to factor in quarterback. I'm going to factor in head coach. I'm going to try to think through what the game script looks like. And one of these days, I'm going to try to get just the right combination. I'm going to win $1 million, and you're going to see this thing hosted by Jerry and Dr. Kyle. But Dr. Kyle, what's your lineup look like?
Okay, so I talked about my fabulous big bet was the over in Cincinnati with Tennessee, and I'm going. I thought about going with a Joe Burrow stack. I also thought about a Herbert Keenan Allen stack, but for now, at least my one lineup that I've set so far, I've got four Tennessee Titans. I got Tannehill, Derrick Henry is the half point PPR like you alluded to, and AJ Brown and Jonnu Smith. Um, and then on top of that, so Tyler Boyd is my one Cincinnati Bengals player. And then I squeezed in Clyde Edwards-Helaire against the Jets. I feel like both Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire will get their touches in this game where, the spread is 20 points, but the over-under is still 49. So they are projecting the Chiefs to score, what is that, like 30 points, 35 points, somewhere in the 30 to 35 range. And then I'm going with a couple of probably lesser owned guys this week. I've got Brandon Ayuk. I think Debo Samuel will be out. I think we're looking at a questionable backfield in San Francisco. Seattle isn't great on defense. We know that. So I think Brandon Ayuk could see one of his best games of the year. And then with Odell Beckham going down in Cleveland, I've got Donovan Peoples-Jones as my flex this week. And then I'm going with the LA Chargers defense against a Drew Lock offense that has looked less than stellar most weeks this year. He's turned the ball over. He's looking inaccurate, and they're relatively cheap in a week that I feel like we have a lot of lower or over unders this week and some closer spreads than weeks past. So yeah, that's where I'm at with my DFS. And of course, as things come out, there was a lot of like scrolling through the running backs, especially. The San Francisco backfield looks wishy-washy. The Green Bay Packers backfield looks wishy-washy. The Seahawks, the 49ers. There's a number of backfields right now where it's hard to set a lineup without waking up Sunday morning going, okay, who's really going to get the touches?
If you take anything away from Dr. Kyle and I today on this podcast, or if you're watching live on YouTube and all the people, and when I say all, I mean wow, like I can see the number of people watching, and I'm very grateful. So thank you for those that jumped on and watched either via Twitter or YouTube. But if you take anything away from this broadcast, anything at all, is you can't set it and forget it. And you brought up a great point. I'm like, man, that's a great point. If I wake up Sunday and Joe Mixon's out, I'm plugging in cheap Giovanni Bernard in a shootout. Double that if the weather's bad. Short passes, check downs. Joe Burrow, he's throwing the ball. I mentioned this on a different podcast. Joe Burrow is not checking the ball. He's throwing the ball 49 times a game. 49 times a game. There's a reason why even Joe Mixon, who's missed a game, is still in the top of yards from scrimmage. And God bless Joe Burrow, because Zach Taylor's an idiot. He was getting Joe Mixon involved in the passing game, which means Giovanni Bernard would be involved in the passing game. You just mentioned Jamal Williams. I had him in my free voucher DFS contest last week. You nailed it, because when you can get a cheap Jamal Williams in there that is going to get good volume, when you can get cheap Giovanni Bernard in there, who is going to get good volume. So you can start monkeying around with your rosters and building some. I know some of you build many rosters. I build one or two. This is a newfound hobby of mine, because let's be honest, when you play in 17 dynasty and redraft leagues, you have a lot of lineups to set as it is. So what the hell? Let's throw on. I couldn't never possibly throw on 8, 10, 12, 15 entries into a milli maker. So Doc, you got anything else for these people before we get them out of here and get them on about their day or evening?
Nope, that's it. Okay.
Well, Dr. Kyle wants me to remind you that you can find him on Twitter at DWZ_DrPT. And if you have any questions about how to get your mybookie.ag account hooked up and any workarounds you might need, he's a doctor. He can make DM house calls. And I am your affable host. I am Memphis. You can find me on Twitter at DWZ Memphis. And I know a lot of you people do not dip a toe, especially during an election year, in the cesspool that is social media. Cool. You got any questions, you can hit me up via Gmail. You can hit me at dynastywarzone@gmail.com. If you have a question specifically for the doc, I'll forward it to him as his personal email so that he gets that and he can help you out. And subscribe, notifications on. You'll never miss a show. 6-7 shows a week. So much free content. We just ask you to subscribe here, notifications on. And if you're a podcast consumer, man, hit pause, go in and leave us a 5-star. And here's the thing. If you listened to Wednesday's Dynasty Warzone, we're answering trades. You leave us a 5-star, you put your trade in the comments. Jerry and I spent a good 6 to 8 minutes covering this gent's question on the Wednesday Dynasty Warzone podcast. It was a great time. We want to help you out. 5-star reviews, notifications, subscribing everywhere, anywhere. We appreciate you so much. But on half of that, man, his name is Dr. Kyle. I am Memphis. And remember, here at the Fabulous Big Bet, we want to remind you that money won is twice as sweet as money earned. We'll see you next week for a Week 9 preview. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great week.